God here. And it's football season. And it's like 100 degrees outside. Sorry about that. Welcome to Season 3 of Gods of Odds, hosted by two of my favorites, Brad Hoyseth and Dave Daba.
Welcome to the Gods of Odds. It is week number 18 of your National Football League season. That is Brad Hoyseth over there in beautiful Southern California. I'm Dave Daba up in rainy, windy, hurricane wind style stuff going on up here, Brad, in Northern California. It is so good to be back for a week number 18 of this NFL season. We are recording this, as always, on Thursday afternoon. No Thursday night football game that I'm aware of, Brad. I did want to just sort of kick off the show with some good news on the Damar Hamlin front. He has woken up, was communicating with doctors. These reports just came out about 2 hours ago, and was able to write something to the effect that did the Bills win the game. Just a really crazy week. Brad, I don't know about you, but I was watching it in real time as it all unfolded. And we literally just, stood there in shock for a couple hours before we, I finally switched off all of the coverage.
Yeah, it was pretty surreal. I mean, I've been watching football for a long time and never seen anything like that. I mean, I remember the Darryl Stingley injury, although I don't really know that I saw it live on television. Yeah. I remember the guy for the Lions that got paralyzed. Again, I'm not sure I saw that one live. I'm very surprised the guy is doing as well as he is. I mean, when you hear of a guy having, CPR for 9 minutes or something, you think, well, that's, I mean, I don't know much about the doctor's world, but that doesn't sound right, And so, a lot of emotions went on during that thing. I thought to myself at one point, Dave, and I'm me, I'm like you, I'm about as big a football fan as it gets.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, if the NFL starts this game, I may never watch NFL football again. I mean, that was what was going through me. Like, it's not possible. You can't start this game again. And so fortunately that thing, I don't think they really had any choice anyways, the NFL. I mean, the criticism, there would have been a lot of people just like myself that would have said, that's it. I'm when you choose money over, a person's health, there's something wrong with the fundamental league rules if that's where you're going. So, it was tough. It was tough to watch, and almost for like a day or two, I didn't really want to hear any news about it because I just assumed the worst. That's kind of where my head goes. But it's fortunate that things are looking up. I don't know what the league does from here on forward. It doesn't look as if they've really, scheduled to redo the game. It was a huge game. There was massive implications for the playoffs. But I think, we haven't heard much. Seems to me like maybe the teams have just agreed not to play. And, there's a few options. They have an extra week built in for the playoffs. You could push the playoffs back a week and play just that one game, and then not have a week in between the championship games and the Super Bowl. Just not have that week. That would be fine with me. Either way, I'm good with it. But I think if you're the Bills and you're the Bengals, you feel pretty confident about how good your teams are, and you just take what a tie gives you or what a no game gives you, and you say, we think we can win. We think this is going to rally our team, and we're going to win in the playoffs, regardless of if we're at home or if we're on the road.
Yeah. Look, bottom line here is it's, just I think the NFL's just been waiting to sort of see how what the recovery was going to start to look like for DeMar before they made any sort of decisions on this. And I think maybe they're even waiting to see what the outcomes are of this upcoming weekend's football games before you have to really get into the debate of the Bills are a half game behind the Chiefs, and so are the Bengals. What do we do for that first spot? Because you're talking about a bye, and you're talking about home field advantage in the AFC throughout the playoffs. Once again, in the scheme of things, not really the topic at hand for today, I think.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think the problem you run into there was, you were saying on the night that everything happened that the game is irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of hard to go back on that and say, well, now it is relevant.
Right.
It's just kind of.
And that's, and without, we can do a completely separate podcast on how the media handles stuff another day, I guess. But that's really the crux of it all. I mean, I heard some crazy things where one person said that they thought they would just hand the Bills the first seed, and it's like. I just so I think it's wait and see on that. We'll see how things go this weekend and how we get through it. But once again, want to reiterate some really good news. I didn't do any other podcasts this week, Brad. This is the no regular disturbance this week. I just didn't think it was appropriate to have a conversation yet. And a lot of people sort of have felt that way. All right. But so good news on a Thursday afternoon. We are back for week number 18, Mr. Hoysef. We've got the playoffs right around the corner. You have a whopping 4-game lead heading into this weekend. Collectively, the gods of odds, and I'm just going to ride on your prediction coattails, are above 500 this season, which is an absolute fantastic thing. Mr. Hoysef, I'll pass it over to you for our first game of the week.
Yeah, well, and might I add that I'm wearing my old Quarry Golf Course hat again today, Dave, because in about 4 or 5 days, that's all half the league's going to be doing is playing golf, which, is not that bad of a deal if you're a professional football player. But, first game I'm going to go into right away, I think that's the Chargers at the Broncos. The Chargers are a 3-point favorite, and I get a sense that I think the Chargers play late on this day, Dave, and sometimes the times of these games is really, I think, going to be key depending on what happens in the earlier games. But I think the key game for the Chargers is really what happens in the Bengals and Ravens game.
Wait, did Kirk Cousins get traded to the Broncos?
No, but the reality is that if the Bengals beat the Ravens, I don't think any of the Chargers have any incentive to play. And and I think the Bengals will beat the Ravens. And so therefore, I don't think the Chargers can move up or down, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that. But the reality is that if that happens, if the Bengals win, I believe that the Chargers are stuck in their spot. They can't go up or down, and pretty much it's all she wrote for trying to play all the starters and stuff like that. Now, the Broncos are still bad, and they're fully capable of losing to anybody. But I just get a sense that giving up 3 for the Chargers, I'm going to take the Broncos at home in the final game of the regular season.
Yeah, this was Brad often says this about games I pick. Definitely a game I wouldn't have picked. So, yeah, because you don't know who if they're gonna play everybody or not. Broncos interim coach. They played well on the road last week. You really should not play Herbert in this game. I don't think there's any. I think they're pretty locked in at this point, so there's no incentive or upside there. I will remind everybody out there that I am 4 games behind, and so this was one of the games, at least for the regular season. I thought I should definitely get out and pick the Chargers. I just believe that their defense is strong enough. They'll find a way to deal with the Broncos. They're only putting 3 points on the line, which should continue to tell you everything. I mean, we don't even know if they're really going to play Russell Wilson a lot in this game either. Got to save him for next year, Brad. So I'm not sure about that, but I did want to mention one thing. Man, are the Ravens just terrible without Lamar? I mean, that team is like it's like the battery is out of the car when Lamar is not playing. I mean, they can't do anything.
Yeah. And to me that game before the Chargers game it's critical because really, if the Ravens somehow put it together and win that game, then all the Chargers are going to play. Then everything changes, right? Then your bet of taking the Chargers minus the 3 looks really, really good. Right. And the reality is there's kind of that wild card thing attached to it too, is how are the Bengals going to react now playing the Ravens after what happened on Monday night? So, there's a lot of ifs and ands and buts, but I believe the Bengals will come out hot. I think they'll win big, and I think the Chargers will rest other guys. And that was really the premise of why I picked this game. Otherwise, I'm like you. I don't really like the game that much, but that's why it's my first one out of the box as well.
All right. My first one out of the box is the Mike White and the Jets at the Dolphins. Fins favored by a whopping point. Can you even name who the Fins starting quarterback is going to be? So Fins favored by a point. I think the jury is officially out on the Jets quarterback room. They have none. Mike White's a really nice backup. He's a good player. He's a good kid to have on the team. He's maybe a little bit better than a Taylor Heineke in Washington, but he's not a starter that the Jets are going to want to start the season with next year. I don't see that necessarily. This Dolphin team, it's a home game. They've got a strong running game. Regardless of who the quarterback is, they should have a chance. I mean, to me, this is a potential 10-point victory for the Dolphins in this one.
Yeah, I don't know, Dave. I went the other direction because I'm not real confident that Teddy Bridgewater is even going to play. And I watched some of that game last week with Thompson playing quarterback, and that's a train wreck waiting to happen right there. So first off, I wouldn't bet this game unless I knew that who was playing quarterback, really. And if it's Bridgewater, I think the line is, it's okay. It's a -1. You're saying that the Fins at home are going to win. Certainly, it looks as if they have maybe more to play for. I'm not quite sure, but I went the other way. I took the Jets just because I don't feel confident that Teddy Bridgewater is going to play. He hurt his pinky finger on his throwing hand, and again, I don't know what time this game is at. But it's entirely possible that the game might be irrelevant by the time it goes off. And so I'm going to take the Jets. I don't know why. The Jets have given me no reason to take them in recent weeks. But at one point during the season, they were kind of a fun, exciting team to watch and to bet on. So I guess maybe I'm just setting myself up for a little bit more pain, but I'm going to take the Jets in the point.
Between the Jets and the Vikings, those are the two reasons I'm currently 4 games behind you in the standings. I'm not falling for it again. I just as I was surprised the line was like, it's like going to McDonald's and saying, I don't want a small fry. I just want one fry. I mean, it's only one. The line is a point. This late in the season is just with minor playoff implications for the Dolphins. To me, the Dolphins should have been favored by at least 3 in this game. And sure, I can't pronounce the name of the starting quarterback of the Dolphins, but or I should say, I'm sure I could pronounce it. I just don't even know who they're playing at this point. But I'm just all in on the Dolphins in this game. Who is the quarterback? Thompson?
It's Skylar Thompson.
Skylar
is the name of the young man, and I can assure you this: Skylar Thompson did not look very good last week. So
his family was probably big fans of Buicks.
Yeah, probably right.
Yeah.
So, anyways, my next game is a game that I don't think anybody will watch. It's the Panthers at the Saints. And the over-under is 41.5 on that. And I went the under in this, Dave. By the way, I threw you a bone in that last game. I could have easily just picked the same teams as you picked and, just kind of bled you to death by 1,000 cuts, right? But I didn't do that. I threw you a bone, and I took the Jets just because I've been kind of a Jet honk all season long, right?
Yeah.
But in this one, Panthers-Saints over-under is 41.5. Neither team's got anything to play for that I know of. Neither team has a lot of talent that I know of. Neither team is exciting that I know of. Nobody will watch the game. I'm pretty sure I know of that. But I'm going to go under. I just don't think they have anything to play for. They're just bleeding out the clock and just getting it over with so that they can get out this thing right here, the golf hat, and go play some golf, Dave. So I'm taking the under.
I love that. I think maybe the Colts Texans will have even worse ratings than this game. By the
way, I would watch the Colts Texans over the Panthers Saints, I think.
I don't know.
It's a coin flip.
That's a question that should have never been asked. You can't. I can maybe delete it from the show. But I look at this and you can go either way on this. I just think, I believe in a little bit of Sam Darnold. I think the Saints are obviously going to win the game. I think they'll probably score, 20 plus points. So now I just need Darnold to, figure out how to get 13 to 17 points in a game. And or throw a bonus pick 6 to a cornerback for the Saints. So I'm taking the over. Something just tells me that this game's going to be a little higher scoring than you would have imagined.
Yeah, the only thing that's telling you it's going to be higher scoring is that you got 4 games to make up. So that's it.
Yeah, that's actually very, very, very true. I got to tell you. All right, Brad. Moving on. Let's see here. Okay. We're gonna do the disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful. This team right here, and I'm holding this up for people that are looking. This is my Minnesota Viking division championship hat. That arrived this week. Notice it hasn't been worn yet. The sticker, if I could return it, I would. There's also a hoodie that it came with. Just disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful. We've got the Vikings Bears game. A shout out to the McCaskill, the owner of the Bears. She turned 100 years old today. Monumental feat. Vikes are favored in this game. I'm obviously going to go ahead and take the Vikes. Justin Fields isn't playing. The Vikings are still theoretically playing for some position in some imaginary position heading into the playoffs. It is the question I would really ask you, Brad, is can they fix the defense? Is there anything that they can do between now and their first playoff game to actually like teach that old dog a new trick?
I mean, there's things you can do schematically. I mean, you can blitz more or blitz less, or maybe change the alignment at last, second to try to confuse the other team. From a talent perspective, no. I mean, that's what they have. That's, you got to go with the girl that brought you to the dance, right? And so it's just not a very good defense. They're number 31 in the league, and they're terrible defensively. And look, I've said it routinely throughout the course of the year. I think I started back when I said they're about the worst 7-2 team in the league, and then they were the worst this and that, and now they're the worst 12-4 team in the league. But the reality is that they have. I even came up with a new term for the Vikings this year. They have Chernobyl quarters. Where things just melt down beyond belief.
Yeah. And Brad, I was actually going to say, so you take the girl to the dance, or boy, or however, whatever you take somebody to the dance. We got to be PC these days. You take somebody to the dance, and while you're at the dance, look, if it's not working, it's not working. you politely say your goodbyes and you move on to something else. It is ridiculous. If they run the same scheme in the playoffs, I'll be so because they'll definitely lose. They've got to mix it up. They've got to try something. There's no question
about it. They cannot go out there and play the kind of defense they've been playing in the playoffs and expect to have any success, especially when you get against a good quarterback. A guy like Aaron Rodgers is going to eat you alive.
Look, I think Daniel Jones is going to eat him alive. I really do.
I think the saving grace for the Vikings is that right now every team in the NFC, if they want to put a silver lining on this deal, every team in the NFC has flaws.
Yeah.
The Eagles are not playing their best football right now. That's a reality. Now, Jalen Hurts comes back, it's going to be a different animal, right? But still, it's not like Gardner Minshew is a bad player. Their defense is not playing as well, the Eagles. And in San Francisco, the rookie quarterback has played 3 games, right? I mean, he's one bad game away from being out of the playoffs.
He's had 4 interceptions that were dropped.
Let's the Giants are nothing special offensively. And so if you want to look at the positives for the Vikings, it's that I think you're going to be going – I don't think the Vikings want anything to do with either the Packers or the Lions. For some reason or another, I think those 2 teams are just better than the Vikings right now. Now, either one of those teams might not even make the playoffs. But I think if you're the Vikings, you wanted to get the 2 seed. And so I'm going to take the Vikings, to make a long story short with you here, because they play early. They have to win in order to have any shot at that 2 seed. I think you'd much rather play the 49ers at home than on the road in round 2 if you get there. And so they're a much better football team at home, the Vikings. The Bears have nothing to play for. Their defense has played gamely, even though they lost a ton of talent midseason. I think the Vikings have to win this. They have to win it convincingly. They haven't won anything convincingly. I mean, I'm giving 5.5, right? That's an amazing amount of points to give if you're the Vikings. They've been outscored by their opponents by 19 points for the year, and they're 12-4. So they are the most puzzling enigma in the league this year. But I'm going to be with you. I'm going to take the Vikings. I'm going to give the 5.5. I think they got a lot more. They've got something to play for because they play early. And then the Niners are going to have a lot to play for late.
Yeah. Only thing I would say is if, weather turns into some sort of factor here, and we end up in a blizzard or a fog bowl or something like that. But this should be a layup, if you will, for the Vikes in this game. I'm looking forward to the playoffs right now, and I this is a perfect chance for them to try some different things, especially if they get out to an early lead in this game on the defensive side of the ball. I literally, like, I would not have been upset if they made a move with Ed Donatella halfway through the season. And really nice guy. But as a defensive coordinator, with the talent that they have on this team, it's just, there's a reason they've been blown out so many times.
Yeah, but it's not even that, Dave. The way they went down last week, they lost their right tackle last week. He's gone. He's probably the second best offensive lineman they have on the team. They're in their third string center.
Yeah.
And what happens is Kirk Cousins at that point turns into Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
And he turns the ball over 4 times. And you're not winning games in the playoffs if you turn it over 4 times. That offensive line is a mess now. I mean, yeah. I'm a firm believer the Vikings are one and done in the playoffs. I don't think they win a game. But there are some things to look at. I think there's a lot of flawed teams in the NFC. I think the AFC is clearly the power conference right now. I think you got 3 teams in the AFC that could beat anybody from the NFC.
So I'll leave you with this, Brad. That NFC North Division Champions 2022 hat and matching hoodie, which is in the other part of the big home office, will refuse to wear those until the Vikings win another game. So you just watch them lose to the Bears this weekend and then go 1-out. And I won't wear this gear until next year.
The thing about it is, though, is that there is that other factor with the Niners playing at home in what is probably going to be a quagmire, right? I mean, that's going to be a mess, that game. I mean, you could have turnovers. Now, if you're the 49ers, you're probably just going to run the ball to Christian McCaffrey all day long. But, it's one of those situations where, when you get weather like you guys are set to have this weekend, they could be playing in a swamp down there by the time Sunday afternoon hits, right?
Yeah, and do you even want to play? How much of McCaffrey do you want to play, right, on turf that is, bad to begin with? So,
all right, who is it? Me?
It's you. And as you do that, I was going to my weather app.
All right. Yeah, we all have one of those this week, don't we? Well, my next game is just that. It's the Cardinals at the Niners, and the Niners are 14-point favorites, big line. And I think the big news, it's going to be twofold coming into that game. A, did the Vikings win? And B, what's the weather? I think the Vikings will win. And so what you're left with is San Francisco needing to win at home by 14 in a game where, the Cardinals quit playing football a long time ago. And I think Cliff Kingsbury is going to be the next guy fired after the game, by the way. I think he'll be gone. And that's a tough one. I got to be honest with you. I almost flip myself back to the Cards just because the weather. I think the weather is going to be really rugged up there. You've seen it now. What is it, 4 days prior to that?
Yeah.
And it's going to be nothing but rain after rain after rain. Now, I don't know what they're doing to secure that field and keep it as dry as they can, but there's only so much you can do. And like you said, you don't want to get guys injured. The last thing you want to do is lose a McCaffrey or lose a Kittle because the field is in bad condition and they slip and get bruised up before the playoffs. So it's a tricky one, but I'm going to take the Niners. I'm going to give the 14. I just think the Cardinals quit a long time ago. And I believe the Niners are going to have way more to play for by the time that game kicks off.
Yeah, no, I agree. It looks like I just checked the Doppler radar on my phone. But it looks like we've got about a 36-hour sort of lull in rain. And then it looks like it's going to rain all day Saturday and on Sunday during game time is like a 60% chance of rain. So as you know, the Bay Area is full of them, and a lot of people out there might not know this, but there are microclimates here. So,
Dave, does your family?
Good chance there'll be a lot of wetness.
Now we're both Midwestern guys, and which means that we've watched the Weather Channel. I mean, we just do. It's a weird thing.
And I pay for the radar on my phone, and
right. Do you get the same kind of flack as I do about watching the Weather Channel?
I try to do it once the women and children have gone to bed, or if I'm in my home office, I might pop it on. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating, to check out what the weather is going to be like in northeastern West Kentucky tomorrow. Yeah, look, I'm going to agree with you on this 49er game. I think, unfortunately, Cliff's going to be gone. Bad organizations make bad decisions, one after another, after another, after another. And this is, no different. I mean, an organization that's actually going to put a clause in a quarterback you just gave $200+ million to about studying, and then release it so everybody knows he's a bad study, and then take it out. Or a couple weeks earlier, you unnecessarily signed your head coach and GMs to both extensions of their contracts. They're going to be on the hook for another 3 years of Cliff Kingsbury. It's just one bad decision after another. I would love to play Monopoly with the people that run the Cardinal organization with some real money. I think I could make some money there. Bad organizations are bad organizations. The Cardinals, are sort of up and down. They're like the Falcons, where it's like, every 5 or 6 years they're suddenly have a good team by accident. So they're going to have to move on. It's a shame because I wanted to see Kingsbury survive, but to be honest, he wasn't that good of a head coach in college either. And normally what happens is you've got great college coaches that come to the NFL like Matt Rule and fail, and then they end up back in college. Which in this particular case, Matt's case, should we be worried? He's the new head coach at Nebraska. So I heard all sorts of stuff about Cliff going back to college, and I'm just like, yeah, but he wasn't that good in college either. So I don't know what's going to happen there.
You mentioned the game Monopoly. Has anybody ever actually finished a game of Monopoly? I've played it a billion times. I don't think the game's ever come to a conclusion.
Yeah, I have to say, like we've got like variations of the game of Monopoly, and yes, like with the kids, we never actually ever finished it. So especially if you have like 4 players, it just never ends. But we had like these express Monopoly games. What the hell that those things were all about. Yeah, an opportunity for I think they're owned by Hasbro to make some more money off of everybody. All right, moving on. Let's see here. I've got the Pats at the Bills. Patriots control their own destiny. You know how I feel about Bill Belichick as a head coach. At this point, you should know how I feel about Matt Patricia as a coach of anything, let alone the offensive coordinator with Joe Judge, as they share duties in destroying what was once a young, promising, potential superstar in the NBA and the NFL and Mac Jones. That's a stretch. But at least he was like, middle of the road. Now he's end of the road. And I just, it's astonishing to me that Belichick's got this team at 8-8. They have no wide receivers. Running game is suspect. Works half of the time. They've got a nice defense. If we get into a conversation about special teams, then it's not worth having it. Hey, I think they're going to win this game because of their special teams, Brad. No, I'm going to go and take the Bills. Being totally as respectful as possible. That's a hard thing that both the Bills and the Bengals went through on the field. I mean, like, we felt it at home, thousands of miles away. And like I mentioned, just sat there glued to the TV and a couple days to just sort of even get that sort of taste out of my mouth, out of what I saw. And we've seen lots of that. We've seen players, get carted off all the time in the NFL. This was different for sure. You brought it up earlier. How do you think the Bills will react? Look, I think at the end of the day, they're professionals. This is a team that's probably going to destroy the Patriots this weekend. I'm taking the Bills in this one.
Dave, I gave you a chance here. I flipped and I took the Patriots.
Oh my God! Yes, it's like a holiday present. Thanks, Brad.
It is. It's a post New Year's present, I guess you could call it.
Wow.
And the reason is like you said, I don't think anybody knows really how these teams are going to react. Their head clearly has probably not been on football a lot.
Yeah.
And they're playing Bill Belichick. Your head better be on football, right?
Yeah.
And so, Bill Belichick is one of the great compartmentalizers that, the league's ever seen. Not that might make the entire difference. I mean, this thing might be just all about emotion, this game, and if it is, I think you take the Bills and you give the 7, but I think it's a real challenge. And, you couldn't, I don't think you could have picked a worse coach to have to go up against the Bills than have to face Belichick in this situation. But it's intriguing, if nothing else, just because of that coaching matchup and Belichick and what's he going to do to try to, he always tries to take the best tools and weapons away from you as a defense. And so I thought 7 was a fairly large number. The Patriots are, what's their record, Dave? They're right now the 7th seed, and so they need to win. And I just thought 7 points was a lot in that case. If the Patriots win, they're in the playoffs, and so I think they're playing to win. I think Belichick will have them in the right frame of mind to play to win. And I'm just not sure exactly about the Bills. I really am not, and so. I flipped. I'm giving you a chance to pick up a game. I'm going to take the Patriots in the 7 points.
Yeah, I almost ignored the 7 points in my statement there.
Well, my question is it 7 points because of what happened? Is that why it's 7 points? Because it seems to me to be a fairly large number.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it was funny too because I had to go hunting for the number. It wasn't on the at the time I pulled numbers. It hadn't gone to the board that I pulled them from, but I just want to be really clear. I have the Bills, winning the Super Bowl this year, like most people did at the start of the season. So stick to that. But I would love to see Belichick win this game. Forget about the points for a second. I would just love to see, Belichick, finish the season 9-8 and actually in the playoffs. I mean, Dolphins not in, Jets not in.
Hey, let me tell you something. Nobody wants to see Bill Belichick in the playoffs.
No,
their team has outscored their opponents by, they have when you look at that, little scenario, they're a lot better off than the Vikings, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do you think the Bengals or any of those teams want to see Bill Belichick? Nobody wants to see Bill Belichick in the playoffs. And, they're not that scary of a team, but he always has that defense ready to play. He's one of the great X's and O's coaches that we've ever seen. And so, it's intriguing. I agree with you. I'd love to see Belichick in the playoffs, but, man, it's hard to root against the Bills this weekend. That's for certain.
So as you know, Brad, and as my wife has heard on numerous years ago, I was like 5, 6 years ago, I did a podcast, and the title was I love Mike Tomlin, and I've carried that through. So Tomlin actually has a chance to keep his record going of never finishing below 500 in a season. I mean, serious. I mean, Deshaun Watson is a mess. I don't know if, the whole off season they'll get that thing straightened out there in Cleveland, but it is Cleveland. And I think it would be a mistake to let Kevin Stefanski go there in Cleveland. But Tomlin's just got to beat the Browns this weekend to finish 9-8. If I could get a Tomlin 9-8 and a Belichick 9-8, I would feel totally fulfilled by this football season.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've always liked Mike Tomlin as a coach. I think it's one of his best coaching jobs he's ever had. I mean, you got a rookie quarterback trying to, turn the page past Ben Roethlisberger. They weren't a very good football team last year, and I'm not entirely sure how they're 8-8. I looked at that this morning. I thought the Steelers are still in the playoff hunt.
Yeah.
But right now they're in the hunt. They're not in yet. There would have to be some things that would have to go right for them. So we'll see what happens there. One of them would be the Patriots and the Dolphins both losing. If they both lost, the Steelers won, and the Steelers would be in. I mean, there's a lot of things there's a lot of scenarios that have to play out for the Steelers to make the playoffs, but still going above 9-8 and keeping that record going would be pretty impressive.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Hoyseth, on to your next game.
Well, let's see here. My next game is the Rams at the Seahawks. And Seattle's a 6.5 point favorite. And to me, this is just a classic case of one team having a lot to play for and the other team having nothing to play for. I think things unravel for the Rams. They've kind of looked okay under Baker Mayfield the last few games. He's actually looked okay, but it's still not a very good football team. And I think it's time to break out the golf clubs for the Rams. Seahawks have a lot to play for. Pete Carroll's a great coach. 6.5 is a little bit rich, but I'm going to take Seattle in this one just because they have a lot more to play for.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said about the this particular game. Baker is who Baker is. He's okay. He'll win some games for you. If you had if they had more talent around him, a better O-line, Stafford probably wouldn't be injured right now either. Maybe they'd be in a different position, but he's not going to take you to the promised land or anything like that. But he's a nice backup. Good to have as a backup on your team. Baker to some extent is good for the NFL. I don't want to see him, in an XFL jersey. I don't want to see him, hanging out with The Rock, doing an interview or anything like that because he signed with the XFL. At least give it another year, Baker, and let's see what happens. As for Pete Carroll and Geno Smith, and a little bit of a blown opportunity for the Seahawks this year, considering the start that they sort of got off to. All in all, a really good year for the Seahawks general manager, and for Pete Carroll and the organization as a whole. With a lot of draft capital coming back their way as well, Brad. I mean, a lot of draft capital. Not the Herschel Walker level, but similar in some respects in terms of what they actually got. back for Russell Wilson. They basically walked into a Walmart and stole everything and got away with it. Like, did they do the deal at Sam's Club, Brad? That's the big question there.
The big question here, Dave, is, Seattle plays before the Lions and Packers. And so the Lions and Packers, they play on Sunday night, and that game might be irrelevant when it kicks off. And so in fact, I believe it will be, because I think the Seahawks will win big. But, so that might change your pick in one of the other games you picked, right?
No. I think there's some wackiness in all of this. So unless my understanding is incorrect, Seattle wins. They don't knock out the Packers; they knock out the Lions. If Green Bay beats Detroit, the Packers actually control their own destiny in all of this right now. And at least that's what Steve Kornacki told me.
Well, right now the Seahawks are the 7th seed.
Yeah, there's a wacky little glitch that they're listed as the 7th seed, but the true 7th seed really would be the Packers. It has something to do with games in divisions and games in conferences.
Did they play each other? They have a head-to-head?
I don't remember, but I trust Steve Kornacki. MSNBC's very
love Steve Kornacki, by the way, one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Yeah, if we could get Steve together with the folks over at the Weather Channel, we might have something there, Brad. Yeah, so I think I was going to bring this up as well. This was a missed opportunity by the NFL to do the right thing, but they chose money instead. And the money part of it is, like, what were they going to do? Were they going to take that Jags game and have the Jags Titans game on Sunday Night Football, or were they going to take Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay and America's new darlings, the Detroit Lions, and stick them on Sunday Night Football? The downside of that is the Lions going into the game, according to Kornacki, could be completely out of it at that point. So it was a bit of a missed opportunity. I could see the NFL felt like they were in a tough spot, that the game that was going to draw the biggest rating was going to be that Packer game versus Detroit on Sunday night.
Well, the NFL is all about making money, Dave. That's their whole deal, right? And so, you had to know that was coming, right?
Well, yeah. I mean,
they're going to bleed you out for every second of football they can possibly get this Sunday.
Yeah, and I just wish. I think like the projections on like if you were running the NBC Sports and you're looking at the packages of games that you have in front of you this weekend, you probably would have landed on Packers Lions as well. And it's just one of those things. All right. So moving on, Titans at Jaguars. I think this is like a Thursday or a Saturday night game. Jags at home with the quarterback who looks like he belongs on those Harlequin novels. Those romance novels, Brad. Long hair of Trevor Lawrence. I've been up and down on Trevor since he's been in the league. He's definitely played a lot better than I thought he was going to play. I've seen all sorts of like wacky things about, trying to make Trevor Lawrence into one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the National Football League. I think I talked about how ridiculous that was last week. But Mike Vrabel, this Titans team's a mess, man. They're going to start Joshua Dobbs again, which just blew me away that was where they were headed. So I've got the Jags in this one pretty easily.
Yeah, did you take the over under in that thing? It was
oh yeah, sorry. It was over under and it was 40. Sorry. Yeah, I'm taking the 40 on this one.
I'm going to take the over. Yeah, I mean, first of all, it never sat right with me that on the last week of the season, they played a game on Saturday. To me, that was, if you're one of the playoff teams the following weekend, you have like an extra day built in of rest. And I never quite understood why the NFL did that, other than, like you said, they're just trying to make as much money as they possibly can. But I think both these teams really want it. They both need it. They both have something to play for. They will have something to play for at the time that thing kicks off. And I think the offenses will be fine. I don't think there's any weather problems going into that thing like there was a couple weeks ago when it was very cold down there. I see the offenses clicking. The Tennessee defense doesn't look very good. Your boy Zay Jones has been hot. I'm not that interested in the game myself personally. I don't think either one of these teams is very good, but it's something to do on a Saturday night, Dave, and I'll be sitting there watching it and rooting for the over.
I will be at Chase Center on Saturday night, catching a Warriors Orlando Magic basketball game. Let's just say those are the games where the tickets don't cost $1,000, Brad. So I'll have to catch the game when I get home from the other game. This Jaguar team, the scenario I think that I saw is like it's all sort of plays out where the Jags will have a home game against the Chargers. Do you think a Jags team can beat a Charger team? It's not a cakewalk with that Charger head coach. I'm telling you, I would be very worried. And Trevor Lawrence hasn't, I don't even think he threw a touchdown last week, and Herbert's been, not putting up the skyrocketing touchdown numbers in the second half of the season either. If I were
about that team, Dave, the Chargers, that just concerns me a little bit, and it goes past Brendan Staley. Herbert is an amazing talent, but he's not there for me yet. He's just not, and he has moments where I go, "Wow, that kid's got an amazing arm." But then there's times when he just throws a pass where I go, "That's not a championship quality, decision or what have you." And so now they got most of their guys back. I think they're a pretty good football team. I can't stand their coaches, but it is a puzzling deal with Herbert because I so much want to like the guy. But every once in a while, he throws a couple passes in there, and I go, where was that coming from, right?
Yeah. I think all quarterbacks, even Patrick Mahomes does that, and we know Josh Allen certainly has had his issues. I mean, like Patrick Mahomes has thrown like 10 picks this year. Like really good quarterbacks are going to take chances. My problem with them isn't necessarily the arm talent or the Herbert talent. I think Joe Lombardi, who's their offensive coordinator, his favorite, Brad, if I were to ask you, what's his favorite kind of ice cream? The correct answer would be vanilla, because that is exactly what that offense is like. It's just vanilla. It's just, there's nothing special about it at all. It's all very predictable. I think there's an opportunity there at some point to make a change in direction.
Speaking of offenses that are going to be very vanilla and you're not going to see much from them this week, it's my final game, the Cowboys at Washington. There's absolutely nothing at stake in this game. The Cowboys have, they know what their fate is going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be the 5 seed. They're going to play them and the Buccaneers. They kind of know what's going on, don't they? I mean, so the over-under in this game was 41. I don't think it even reaches 31, Dave. I just think they're going to pack it in. Washington might have a little more incentive to try to, stick it to the Cowboys one last time before the end of the season or something. But I'm going to take the under in this thing at 41. I just don't see them scoring a lot of points.
Yeah. The Cowboys, I believe, as well as the 49ers, according to our friend who should work at the Weather Channel, Zarnacki, have a chance at the first seed still. If they win, 49ers lose, and Eagles lose, Dallas wins the division. The Eagles go all the way back to the 5th spot, the 5th seeding, and Dallas is your number 1 seed in the NFC.
I hadn't even looked at that, Dave. I didn't realize that. That's crazy. That Eagles loss last week was a lot bigger than I thought.
Yeah, I mean the Eagles. Quite frankly, they're in real trouble. I think there's more there at this point. It's a shame too, because like the injury to Hurts, that Goddard, when he went down, he was out for a couple weeks. He's back on the field, but he just doesn't look right. Their overall running attack was way better towards the end of last season than it is this season. Some key, injuries on the offensive line, and the defense hasn't, showed up yet. Look, this team has plenty of talent. They could turn things around. The Eagles should win this weekend, but if they don't, and Dallas beats the Commanders, and the 49ers lose, then I know we're talking about a lot of wacky stuff that needs to happen here, but that's where that all lands. Anyways, I'm going to go with the over in this game. I think Dallas has got to, they got to score 25 to 30 points in this game. And the Commanders are once again, they're starting another quarterback we've never heard of before, Brad. Wentz is now the 3rd stringer. And I don't know, like, we both love Ron Rivera. I don't know really anybody that doesn't like Ron Rivera. But like his post-game press conference last week, it's like he basically said he didn't know that they were out of the playoffs.
I think Ron Rivera could be gone. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Things just haven't gotten better there. And it's been kind of a revolving door with the quarterback thing, but I think maybe it's time for a change there. I'm still puzzled on this whole Eagles-Cowboys thing. That the Cowboys can have the 1 seed. I didn't even realize that, which is, really poor homework on my part, Dave. But hey, look, if the Eagles get out front quickly on the Giants, which I think they will, I think the Cowboys will shut it down. I'm going to stick with my pick, and I'm going to take the under on that thing.
All right. Down to our last game of the regular season. Brad will be back for the playoffs. Lions at Packers. This is the Sunday night football game. Packers favored by 4.5 points. I would love to take the Lions in this game. I think the Lions have a really great chance at winning this game. I think they have played better. Aaron Rodgers has turned into a game manager in the last month or so. Nothing wrong with that. when you've got a fairly strong running game. Keeps your defense off the field. I got the Packers winning this. Like there's just something about like great football players. As painful as that is for me to say, I've always given Rodgers the respect when I thought he deserved it. And this would be a time I would tell all those Detroit Lions fans, I'm sorry, but he's going to make you relax.
Ordinarily, I would kind of agree with that, Dave, but I think this is a different kind of Lions team. I think Dan Campbell's a different kind of guy. And I think Dan Campbell, regardless of whether or not they have a shot at the playoffs, wants to win this football game. And I think he's going to have his guys prepared to win this football game because I think he's trying to change the culture in Detroit. I think he has changed the culture in Detroit. And, it's not like it's two teams that don't know each other. This is still a pretty decent rivalry, the Lions and the Packers. And anybody that doesn't think the Lions would love the opportunity to knock Aaron Rodgers and that team out of the playoff. Look, the Lions are a good football team. They might have the best offensive line in football. The Packers are not playing that Rick Shaw offensive line that they saw last week in the Vikings, Dave. They're playing one of the best offensive lines in the game. And, the Lions, hey, if the Seahawks lose, I'm going to be on the right side of this deal. I'm pretty confident in that. But I'm going to take.
I was on LinkedIn earlier in the day, and in my LinkedIn feed, I saw Detroit Lions defensive coordinator for hire. Like their defense is, better than the Vikings, but not much.
No, I don't think it is better than the Vikings. I think they're both bad, but
yeah.
But the Lions have the Lions, I think, are just their offense is smarter than the Vikings. They understand that they can run the ball and take the air out of the ball with Jamal Williams and those guys. And I just think they've had a really, really great year. I think Dan Campbell's done a wonderful job with that team. I think that the future looks very bright there. And I just get a sense that Campbell's one of these guys that it doesn't matter what happens. Sunday night, he's going to have his team ready to play and ready to go. And I don't think the Packers are a very good football team. I really don't. And I'm going to take the Lions. I'm going to take the points.
All right. There you go, my friends. We have made it through week number 18 of your National Football League season. I think I could talk Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packer football all night with you, Brad. But I can tell K-Rock / Rocky the dog is starting to freak out. So we're gonna definitely enjoy this weekend's games. Good news once again with DeMar Hamlin. One last question for you. Which team, if you had to pick, Brad, which team will we see a Harbaugh brother coaching next year in the NFL?
Wow, that's a tough one. I hadn't even really thought about that. I mean, I think there's going to be some movement after the season is over, but I couldn't even begin to. Let me ask you a better question. Who's going to the Super Bowl? Which two teams? I mean, we made our preseason predictions. I'm sticking with my preseason prediction of the Bengals and the Niners.
Yeah, I've got the Bills and the Niners, which I think was my preseason as well. So
we did pretty well.
Yeah. I'm telling you, anything can happen on any weekend in the National Football League. Teams can get hot. Changes can be made. This is me with a final Ed Donatello plea. Changes can be made and improvements can be done through strategy. Even if you don't have all the right pieces that you really need. We wouldn't be talking about Nick Sirianno still as a head coach in the National Football League if they didn't, change what they were doing, which wasn't working last season. And we've seen the results of that, most of this season. But on the Jim Harbaugh question, if I were him and I was choosing between like the Panthers, the Colts, and the Broncos, I'm probably going Broncos.
Are you convinced Jim Harbaugh's jumping to the pros or what?
If somebody will have him, he's going. That's the question. Like he's talking to the Panthers and the Broncos right now.
Yeah, but hasn't he done this before, Dave? Isn't it more of a ploy for him just to get a big long extension from Michigan?
No, he gave back to Michigan. That's just that's what right-wing media BS. He actually gave back to he gave back money to Michigan. He lowered his contract a couple times to stay to help the university out. So he's actually always been very generous with his balls. So
I don't listen to right-wing media, Dave.
I don't know. All right. There you go. Should be a fun weekend of National Football League sports. That's what we've got for you on this week's Gods of Odds.
Let's add one more thing, one more prediction. By the time the playoffs start, will the House of Representatives have selected a speaker?
Probably not. Probably not. What are we on? I think the 10th vote got turned down before we started recording. So if ever there was an opinion that they needed to choose somebody else for that role, it is obvious. Anyways, that is Brad Hoyseth over there in beautiful Southern California. I'm Dave DeBaugh up in Northern California, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing week.